Hello, my name's Karina Thompson. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how you can split a large design so you can stitch it out in smaller hoops. Sometimes we'd call that a multi-hoop design, and it's a great skill to learn, particularly if your embroidery machine only takes smaller hoops. In this video, I've got a PC with the platinum level of software installed, but I'll also show you how you can split a design if you have the silver or gold level of the software. And of course, the principles will be exactly the same if you're on a Mac. If you're a subscriber or own a copy of mySewnet, why not subscribe to our free YouTube channel, and that way you won't miss out on any of our future episodes. So I'm in the main part of the embroidery software. I've got a design loaded into my hoop. It's one of the free downloadable designs that are available on the download page of mySewnet. So if I come here up to Modified Design and click on that, I get a dialog box here that tells me the size of this design. That essentially it's nearly 350 mil by nearly 150. So I'm just going to close that down. And it might be you say, well, that's great, Karina, but my embroidery machine will only take a 240 by 150 hoop. So let me show you a couple of ways that you can split it. Now, if you have the silver level of software, you will be able to use the split project wizard. So I'm going to start off by showing you that. So the split project wizard opens up. What I'd suggest that you do is you click on the change hoop to open up the hoop selection dialog boxes, and of course if you're familiar with the software, you'll know that there's a full list of lots of different brands of machines on there that you can find your embroidery machine on there, or you could go with the universal, and of course then you can pull down the list of all the size hoops that would fit on your machine. I wouldn't necessarily worry too much about the orientation in this wizard. And of course, if you need to, you can actually enter a very specific hoop size. So as I mentioned, I'm going to work with the 240-150 hoop. So I'm then going to click OK. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more so you can see what's going on here. Now at this point, you can see on the thumbnail, we've got this kind of grayed area, and that is indicating the overlap. Now, you can actually increase the size of the overlap by using the arrows if you want, or if you know that there's a specific size of overlap, you can actually type that in. So for example, if we go with 60 mil, for example, it's actually changing that automatically for me. And you can go up to 75 mil in terms of the overlap on here. But in this case, I'm not going to worry about that. What I want to do is take a moment to talk about the split method. So to start off with, I'm going to go with the straight line. And if I actually then click next down here, how the straight line works is it actually works exactly as it said. It works like a guillotine almost, cutting it exactly in half. I'm just going to click on the section here to show the two halves, and you can see it's actually just cut this directly in half. And you might think, that's great, perfect, Karina. In that case, we can then go on to export and stitching out. But in actual fact, I'm just going to go back for a moment. So if I go with the intelligent method, if I then click next, what the software will do is it will try and cut through the least number of stitches. So what it's actually doing is it's recognizing that this is a satin column, and it's trying to put the split in with the grain to minimize any obvious joins within the embroidery. And again, here you can see it's choosing to kind of work around, not just chomp through this area of satin. Again, it's trying to pick up on the grain of those satin lines both here and here. And if I click on this little arrow here, this is actually going to show me the second half of the design. And if I'm happy with this, I'm going to click on the export all sections. But there's a couple of things I just want to go back and talk through. So I'm going to hit back. And again, just zoom in. So you have a choice of alignment stitches, sort of sets of stitches that are part of the design that help you line up the parts of your multi-hoop embroidery. And I personally find using the corner alignment stitches the most useful. So they will put in essentially a little L-shaped set of stitches on each of the corners, which when you're then ready to do the next hooping, you can make sure that the alignment stitches on the second part of your design, or indeed third or fourth part of the design, are where they need to be so your embroidery joins up. It is possible to do that as part of a baste, but like I say, I personally prefer using the corner feature. And of course, there's the ability there not to have any alignment stitches. Using the split design wizard within the embroidery module, you don't get the option to play around with compensation, but there's another way that you can access that I'll come on to in a moment. And then there's the connection. So this is what happens between areas of stitch. And let me show you what I mean. I'm just going to zoom out. We're going to go to next. So I've gone for the trim option. You could opt to have a running stitch. So I'm then going to click next. So can you see here is my alignment stitches in here. Just in the corner, but in actual fact, these are going to be my key ones. So I'm in section 2. And you can see that we've got some essentially sort of jump stitches that would be happening here. I'm just going to go back to section 1. You can see here are my alignment stitches that would help me join up my design. So when I'm stitching it out as part of that multi-hoop design, it should line up. So in this case, if I'm happy with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Export All Sections. And if you're familiar with the mySewnet embroidery software, you'll be familiar with the export dialog window. I'm going to click on the pull down arrow here. So here are all the many file formats that you can export in. In this case, in actual fact, I'm going to go with a VP3. I'm going to leave all the optimize options, and then I'm going to click OK. And at this point, my computer is saying, well, where do you want it? I'm going to put it on my desktop. Now down here, I need to label it, and I will call this geometric hoops. And I don't know if you remember, this was showing that this was a 2-part split. It will actually export this embroidery as a geometric hoops 01 and a geometric hoops 02. I'm then going to click export, and that's those embroideries exported to my desktop. I'm then going to click next. And that's going to offer me some print options, and I'm going to talk about those in a moment. So I'm just going to click finish. Now that's actually still leaving my original embroidery in its larger hoop opened in the software. And at this point, I want to show you another way of splitting that design that's actually going to give me a lot more control. Now I can only do this in the platinum level of software. So I'm going to go over here to the film strip, and I'm going to do a right click, to open that up, and I have the option here, edit in Stitch Editor. So I'm going to click OK. Now you will get this dialog box opening up. I'm in the main part of embroidery. Can you see it says mySewnet embroidery behind? Don't close this window down at this point, and usually the design will automatically open up within Stitch Editor as well. I know I'm in Stitch Editor. It says so up here. I've also got the slider bar down here. So the window's looking slightly different. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to come over to the Modify tab, and I am going to use the Split Design feature. So I'm going to click on that, and this dialog box opens. Now it's slightly different to what we've seen before. Now if I go to the Options feature and do again a right click, I have some choices here. So just like before, I can specify the size of my hoop. In this case, I've gone for the 240 by 150 again. We can have an overlap, and if necessary, you can actually specify how many hoopings you want. I'm just going to go with the default. In actual fact, there's another tab here with the split feature, where in actual fact I can choose my alignment stitches. If you remember, I talked about them before, and my connection. But in actual fact, at this point, the compensation feature is available to me. It's not available in the silver version. What that will actually do is where the edge essentially I'm splitting, if I want to, I can sort of turn on either a low or a high feature. So what will actually happen is the software will make the edge where essentially the splits are, it will extend the stitch area. And this is a useful thing to have, particularly if you are cutting through areas of pattern fill. It helps disguise the join, and you might want to choose, for instance, clicking on low or high, depending on that. You'll never get an invisible split through a pattern area, but the compensation will help. But in this case, I'm going to leave that on no. I'm happy with my hoop choices, so at this point I'm going to click OK. So let's talk about what's actually going on here. We've got a series of nodes in here, in actual fact, that I can do a left click and pull them. So what I'm looking to do is move these nodes into spaces where I'm not going to be cutting through my area of stitch. Now I know at this point I'm going to be having to cut through. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do a zoom to rectangle. Going to click on that. I'm just going to pull that through so I can really see what I'm doing. And at this point, the move point has been the active button up here. In actual fact, at this point, I'm actually going to put in a new point, and I'm going to click on here, and I can see that that's looking good. In actual fact, if I wanted, I'm just going to move it so that gives me a better cut. You can see that I'm actually kind of trying to work with the grain of those satin lines, and what I will do is let's move up through here. I can see I'm in danger here of actually cutting into this pink area, so I just need to look at that. In actual fact, what I am going to do is let's take any danger of that happening out. I'm just scrolling through, and in actual fact at this point I'm just going to zoom back out because I need to have a look. And in actual fact, rather than kind of splitting at this point here, in actual fact I'm going to move it down and try and split it a bit further down here. So I'm going to, in actual fact, zoom in here. And I can see that I want to move that node, and in actual fact that's looking quite nice in terms of the angle. If necessary, if I wanted to, I could put another node in there, and of course if I ever need to take any nodes out, I can then actually, of course, there is the remove node feature. And at this point, if I'm happy with it, I'm going to hit split. So just like before, I can see that I've got a couple of sections that I can flip to and fro. But in actual fact, I don't know if you can remember, this is actually, we've got much fewer cuts in here. We had another, I think when I was using the wizard, it was actually coming through with a cut here and over there. So it's actually a much neater, I've got a lot more control over this. And just like before, if I want to, I can export them. We've talked about that, but I just want to take a moment about this next stage here. Oh, goodness me. It's reminding me, see, the software is always trying to help me. It's saying, oh, hang on, you've not saved your embroidery. Are you sure you wish to proceed? So in actual fact, I'm going to say yes, because I want to take a moment to talk about these options. So you have three choices here, and indeed you can print out all three if you want. So you can have an overview, you could have a 2D template, and you could have worksheets. And once you've finished that, you can click finish here. I'm just going to close that down as well. Because I'm in a stitch editor here, you can see that we've actually got an indicative line here that's indicating the split. But can you remember, over in the main part of the embroidery, up here, we've got this dialog box up here saying editing in stitch editor. If I'm happy with this, I can then click finish, and that will actually automatically close down the stitch editor module for me. So because I'm on a PC, I've gone to Explorer to open up my desktop. If I was on a Mac, I'd be using Finder. And you can see I have my two embroidery designs here. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to open those up. And I'm also going to open up the template, the overview, and the worksheet that I saved as PDFs. So I've opened up those two designs in mySewnet embroidery, mainly just to show you as viewers what's actually happened. So you can see I've got my alignment stitches here that I'm going to be using. So this is geometric hoop 1. Sometimes it's worthwhile looking at where your splits are and how the design is working, because you might want to consider the order that you stitch your designs out, particularly if there's something that maybe is going to perhaps slightly overlap. Just bear that in mind. So you can see here's the geometric hoop 1, and here's the geometric hoop 2. And here are my alignment stitches here, just to make sure that the design lines up. This is the overview. In this case, I'm showing them as PDFs rather than trying to send them to my printer. And you can see, so this is the overview. So you can see we've got an image here. It's saying it's at 41%, and it's giving me information about the design size, but also the hoop size there. And we've got this visualization, and it's showing me what's likely to be going on in terms of those two separate designs. Now, the next printout was the 2D template, and this essentially is a picture to scale of what that embroidery is going to look like. And of course, because it's larger than the A4 printout, that's why it's over 2 pages. And finally, the worksheet option. And I would actually say to you, if you're going to print out just one option, I would go with the worksheet option. It's showing what each of the designs. In this case, we've got here design 01. It's showing me a printout at 100%, what that's actually likely to look like. If I scroll down, I've got another sheet where it's giving me information in terms of the size, in terms of the color changes and the thread information. And also there's some technical information in terms of placement within the hoop. And here is the image at 100% of design number 2. And of course, again, there is another sheet here. And there is the option to opt out of any aspects of the worksheet, that you can actually pick and choose exactly the bits of information you want to print out. So hopefully you can see how easy it is to split a design using either the split design wizard in the main part of the embroidery, particularly if you've just got the silver level of mySewnet, or how you can use the full power within the stitch editor module to really make specific bespoke splits to create your multi-hoop embroidery design. If you found this a useful film, please give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Happy sewing!